you can stress test your documentation now and like spot early gaps and
Yeah.
basically see where steps are unclear, or also you can ask where you have like poor chunking or it's missing examples.
What does evaluation first content lifecycle means in the context of AI driven marketing or even content creation?
I feel like our role is shifting and we kind of becoming more like curators, evaluation architects.
Let me ask this way: what metrics or framework should teams use to evaluate content?
So we are looking at 3 layers of evaluation and metrics, right? So first,
Any risks in relying too heavily on AI for content evaluation?
so that's also important. Going back and like performing these error analysis on the biggest risk is false confidence, because these models are essentially trained on.
Welcome to the Knowledge Based Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today is Netra Pawar, lead documentation engineer at Meta. Hi, Netra. How are you doing today?
Hey Gauri, I'm doing very well. And thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I love that we're talking about something so timely, which is how AI is changing the way we think about docs and content quality in general. So excited to be here.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know you've got ample experience. Is it 14 years of?
I think I've stopped counting, but yeah, I'm sure it's somewhere there. Yeah.
All right. So what was the triggering point? Tell me a little bit about your background. How did it all start, and how are you enjoying this journey so far?
I think, like most of us in the tech writing world, we've chosen this career by accident or just like got introduced after, having done something else prior. So my journey began on similar lines. So I started just after fresh out of college as a campus graduate, started my journey with a company called Mindtree. And I briefly worked as a developer, and that's where I was introduced to this role in the first place. And I was just in awe of the tech writer that was on my team. I think we were really lucky to have a really good doc culture in the product that I was part of. And I just loved how like she had like a holistic view of everything about the product and just the technology in general. And I also had like natural inclination towards language and writing. So I felt like this would be like a great how I got introduced and started my journey from there.
Nice, very nice. Now you work for Meta, and what does evaluation first content lifecycle means in the context of AI driven marketing or even content creation?
Right. So the way we've been thinking is when we look at evaluation first, we mean that we start designing content with having for intent fulfillment and retrievability from the onset, right? So it's like from day one, we start thinking about these concepts and, making sure the content that we've written really answers everything that we set out to author, ensuring that our AI assistants are basically retrieving, because I think the way people consume content is also changing.
Yeah.
So people are like looking at, especially within my own org. So we have our in-house assistants, or we see users going as I think the first surface is these AI assistants. So instead of publishing first and then measuring later, we test content before it goes live. So we are using synthetic user intents that basically mirror how people actually search or ask questions. And we then validate that with real user queries from, like I said, from places like our assistants or like workplace bots. And it's essentially the CICD mindset, but applied to docs. Measure early and like continuously learn and iterate.
Yeah.
So the content gets smarter every time it's used.
Right. What kind of metrics do you measure? Or let me ask this way: what metrics or framework should teams use to evaluate content?
I think, yeah, that's a tough one, right? So we kind of have just through experience kind of learned these in the past few months. So we are looking at three layers of evaluation and metrics, right? So first is where we look at content quality, because like everyone knows, that's more important today now more than ever. So we focus highly on the content quality. Is our content accurate and complete? Second,
Mm-hmm.
we look at like retrieval quality. So which is basically, can the AI or the search system find answers when a user asks a question, right? So
Yeah.
that's where metrics like recall at 10 or MRR come into play. So these are the ones that we kind of piggyback on. And the third impact is basically, is our content, because I work for products within the enterprise, basically the enterprise products that matter. So we look at whether our content is helping to reduce support tickets, or
Yeah.
basically helping users finish their tasks faster. So the key is to mix like human judgment and programmatic checks.
Yeah.
And so basically humans test for usefulness and clarity, whereas you have these more automated tests which looks at coverage and retrieval, and like together they kind of tell the full story.
Understand. Now, how do you see this large language models like GPT-5 changing how the teams approach the content quality? Because you spoke about what kind of content is getting retrieved and you constantly keep looking and then do a feedback, right? So, how do you think it's changing now?
I think when we talk about these frontier models, you can get as creative as possible with playing around with prompts and roles that you assign to LLMs now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we are heavily focused on performing all sorts of experiments that we can, to see how we can use AI to create content for us, to see how we can use it for quality checks, like I just touched on at the very start. So basically, and if you're going into editing, they can turn into like simulations, right? So instead of having like one author reviewing a page, you can
Yeah.
ask AI models to now simulate these thousands of questions through these golden data sets to see if your content really holds up. So it's basically, you can stress test your documentation now and like spot early gaps and
Yeah.
basically see where steps are unclear, or also you can ask where you have like poor chunking or it's missing examples. So basically, I feel like our role is shifting and we kind of becoming more like curators, evaluation architects. At the bottom line, I feel that we are
Mm-hmm.
telling AI what good looks like, right? And guiding how feedback loop should work across the whole doc system. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the major way that I see AI being part of our tech writing workflows.
Not many people talk about this, right? What are the risks? Are there, if at all, are there any risks in relying too heavily on AI for content evaluation?
I think that's a great question, right? So 100% yes, right? So the biggest risk is false confidence, because these models are essentially trained on the content that's their worldwide, right?
Exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
this content is not perfect. We know that definitely the models will carry forward whatever inaccuracies, because
Mm-hmm.
they're not trained on like perfect content, right? So, and I think the scary part about AI is that it can sound very convincing and very confident. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the biggest risk is false confidence. So that's essentially why we always keep human in the loop. So we kind of take like a true two-pronged approach to our evals as well, right? So we start with having domain experts and tech writers kind of perform more human-based evals, and then, but this can't scale. So we then have to also fall back on some of these programmatic evals to again, like for us to like scale this. So basically, it's you always have to have human in the loop, but then AI kind of gives you the speed and like scale. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely very well said.
Yeah.
So you started with AI or we started with AI as the conversation. And now, how do you see AI's role evolving in content evaluation over the next 3 to 5 years?
I feel this is like the one technology which is like really surprised me, like at just the pace that it's moving forward. We can't really predict everything that it can possibly do. But the
Yeah.
way I see it personally, I feel that with all these agents and all of these being spun up literally every single day, I feel that these agents will be able to do a lot of more autonomous tasks on our content. For example, what I mean here is you could have like a run book of sorts or a user guide of
Mm-hmm.
sorts with procedures, and then you could actually deploy these agents to go look at your content and like provision something autonomously, right? So stuff like that. And then like the push pull mechanism comes into play here, right? The paradigm. So you could actually have AI give you alerts, for example, saying that this page might confuse users because it lacks XYZ or it's lacking this context. So I feel it's going to be able to do a lot of but I'm super optimistic, but it's going to be able to do a lot of autonomous things, is what I foresee in the future. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's great. So let's move on to the rapid fire round. So any knowledge base related resources you have recently consumed?
Well, I think I just follow a lot of folks. Like we have some great tech influencers on LinkedIn, so I
Mm-hmm.
think I just follow a lot of folks in the AI space. Some of my favorite ones are for evaluations. I follow Hamil, Hassan, and Shreya.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just within our own org, we have such amazing talent, and I'm just like learning every single day from my colleagues. So yeah, I think there's not like one particular resource per se. And then obviously we have the well-known blogs like Write the Docs and our own
Mm-hmm.
tech writers in the industry that we look at. So, but yeah, I think these are some of the AI influencers that I really follow.
Okay. Okay, that there's AI as well. Now, one word that comes to your mind when you hear documentation.
I'm so bad with these rapid fire is what I'm
Mhm.
understanding. I feel like it's just enabling, right? So I feel at the end of the day, we kind of enabling solving a human problem. So
Yeah,
yeah.
enabling. Yeah. A piece of advice you give to your 20-year-old self.
Wow. I would say like just like keeping uh just like the ability to like learn stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like just being open to like learning a lot of things, experimenting, like not really. So for example, in my 20s, I would go back and thank myself for picking this career, to be honest. I mean, obviously, not everybody who started off as a developer would want to start writing. So I would go back and really thank myself because I feel it's a very rewarding profile. So yeah, so that's one. And then being just open to learning, networking, and just like, yeah, being, yeah, open to like iterating and experimenting. I think that's, and just have fun with it. And
Yeah.
I think our job also allows us to like interview and just meet so many new people. So I think just, yeah, just enjoying the role. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I hope we were able to talk a little bit about what you wanted to cover, but if there is anything else to add, please feel free to add now.
I think we pretty much covered everything that I think on the topic that we had, but I feel in general, I see a lot of hesitance and skepticism about AI when it comes to like the tech writing world. But my personal belief is that we gotta embrace it. It's gonna stay here. And just experimenting with what works for you, just getting yourself trained on how to prompt these AIs, because
Mm-hmm.
there's no one perfect way or like a playbook that tells you like, hey, this is the only way you're going to get a result, right? So that's exactly what we do every day. Like you just have to experiment, and then eventually you'll start seeing those patterns as to why something worked for you. And then yeah, you got to be vocal and share that more widely with your teams,
Mm-hmm.
and just make, like basically share your successes, what worked, and also what did not work, right? So that's also important. Like telling that, hey, I've tried this a bunch of times, but it doesn't work, XYZ. And like going back and like performing these error analysis on,
Mm-hmm.
say if your use case is say conversational AI, go back and see why something wasn't retrieved. I can give you a great example. So
Mm-hmm.
in my own org, for example, so we had like a really well written document, and we know that the answer to the question was in the document, but for some
Right.
reason the LM was just not pulling that. So we went back and like spoke to these teams who really owned the RAG, and then we saw that it was just written in a way like we had some custom components where the RAG was not able to like pull it, right? So we saw like, okay, so this is not the way that we should be writing at times. Not saying that fully write for machines, like you still have to write for humans at the end of the day, but like just like doing these error analysis to see why something doesn't work, rather than taking something at face value and like start questioning, hey, why is it not working? I have everything in my doc. So basically partnering more with your ML teams and your engineering teams. I think that's where we'll see like real good partnership. Yeah. I think that's one thing I wanted to add.
Fantastic. So thank you, Netra, for all those insight and thoughts. And it's definitely adding a lot more points to think about when it comes to AI. So once again, all the very best for your upcoming projects and take care.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gauri. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.